fantasy managers with Ezekiel Elliott on their roster might have been heading to that open bottle of Chardonnay the last couple of weeks because he has not been doing so great. But on the show, fantasy
it could be worse. Could be Najee Harris.
It could be way worse. There's always a way to go down and up. But we here on the show, we have keep it open or close it out. So usually in a bar, that's what you do when you're drinking. But we're going to talk about starting players.
I like it when Julie explains drinking to our audience.
You know what?
Hello, drinking.
Just from a very experienced point of view.
Good day drinking.
From a very experienced.
So,
usually when you're at a bar
if you go to the bar and you decide you don't want to drink anymore, you say, I'm going to close it out. I don't know what that means because I usually just keep it open and forget my credit card there and have to go back the next day or cancel it altogether.
Right.
But in terms of fantasy, we want to know if you are going to keep it open, so you're going to keep starting these players. Close it out means you're going to not start them. So
these are not players we are saying drop. These are merely players. These are borderline start-sit guys for this week that have. And Ezekiel Elliott is the perfect example.
Yes. Okay. So Matthew, let's start with Ezekiel Elliott. Despite high volume, Cowboys' lack of rush efficiency hurting Zeke, are you going to keep it open or close it out?
I'm probably closing it out if I have a better option. Like I'm at running back 27 when she's a low-end flex, and usually in a flex, assuming you're playing a PPR, you want a wide receiver there. He's playing the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And the Eagles have had such a good run defense. They've held opposing running backs to under 43 scrimmage yards a game. They're not involving Ezekiel Elliott in the passing game here. Tony Pollard has the more explosive plays here. If there's a positive here, he's getting work. He's had 16 touches in 4 to 5 games this year, but my expectation here is that on the road at Philadelphia, just the Eagles' run defense is just too tough as well. I think it's going to be a split between him and Pollard. Zeke has yet to play more than 67% of snaps in any game this year. He's not involved in the passing game here, and so basically in a committee against a tough run defense, I'm going to close it out on Zeke.
Yeah, I think the thing is that the past 4 weeks with Cooper Rush, the Cowboys have been leading the entirety of all those 4 games. So they've had game script go their way. That's why he's had 71 carries the past 4 weeks. You don't expect that as 5-point underdogs to Philadelphia. And look, there are going to be people out there who are lucky enough to have, say, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, and Ramondre Stevenson on their roster, in which case, no-brainer, you're sitting Zeke. Yeah. I think he might be, if you don't have any better options, then you feel okay about Zeke as a flex, but you're not feeling great about it.
Jacobs on a bye this week, but your point is well taken, is that you can, there are likely roster construction out there that you have. I mean, who knows, maybe Benjamin starts this week. There are other guys that you feel better about than Ezekiel Elliott going on Sunday night right here on NBC and Peacock. I'm a company man.
It's pretty good to know that, though, because I feel like with Zeke, you always go back to him like your favorite bar, right? You're just I'm going to go back even though it's old. None of my friends are still there.
Right. I had a bad time. I made out with a waiter in a closet once, and now I can't show my face, but whatever.
And now, you know what? Yeah. I'm done. I can't go back to that place now.
Yes.
And guess what? He's going to go off because
that's based on experience. I'm just letting you know that's.
This is just all these analogies are just your life here. Beer pong champion in the neighborhood.
Pretty much.
Okay, so Jay, we have A.J. Dillon. Packers offense, do you think it's too inconsistent to support multiple fantasy viable running backs after what we've seen? Would you keep it open with A.J. Dillon or you close it out?
I'd keep it open. I'd rather start A.J. Dillon than Ezekiel Elliott, honestly, just because of the matchup. And last week in London was just weird. The Packers didn't have the ball the entire second half. I don't know what was happening. They just can't stop the run, and so it was just Saquon o'clock. And so I do think that there is upside with A.J. Dillon. The first 4 weeks of the season weren't nearly as bad. And I do think that, as much as, we love the Jets and there's all this good mojo around the Jets, they still are touchdown underdogs to the Packers. So we'd expect a much kinder game script than A.J. Dillon to produce.
Yeah, I am reluctantly keeping it open, Jay, as well. I agree with your statement that I would rather start him than Ezekiel Elliott. I have A.J. Dillon at 25 in my initial ranks, Zeke at 27. But that's still a flex play. I mean, there are absolutely concerns, right? 4 straight games he's had single-digit fantasy points here. He's not being used in the passing game we thought he would. He has just 8 targets since week 2. 8 targets total as well, 45 or less yards in 3 out of 5 games this year. Having said that, at least 14 touches in 4 out of 5 games. I'm agreeing with you that there is there's game script should be in his favor here, and this is just a throw out the stats, kind of a gut call deal, but after losing to the Giants in London, I think the Packers come back and be like, all right, stop blanking around. Like, all right.
But his snap usage has gone down each week, though.
Every single week, and by the way, and the results haven't been there. So my expectation is on a long flight back from London, Matt LaFleur probably, put down his movie and said, all right, you know what, I'm going to focus on some plays here. Let me look at this. Let me actually look at you know what? What we're doing isn't working. Maybe we should get back to being a little bit more run heavy.
It is crazy that the New York Jets, they're only 7-point underdogs in Green Bay. Like before the season, we would have expected that by this time it would be like 13 points or whatever. But it's 7. I think 7 is the right line because the Jets have been frisky. Just a quick one. Robert Saleh is 50-1 to win Coach of the Year. That makes no sense to me. Like they're 3-2. They have an outside chance to make the playoffs. The New York element is huge. 50-1's too big.
Right, and he's a likable guy. People like him. He's
really
he's energetic.
All the New York coaches are likable.
Yeah. Exactly. Like he's got all sorts of energy. He's
when
bald.
He's
People love bald guys. Yeah, it's all.
Bald guy.
Bald guy. Did you guys see People magazine named Vin Diesel the sexiest bald man alive yesterday?
And
I'm just like, how many times do I got to get screwed here? How many times?
Vin Diesel's different. Like he's.
How's he different, Julie?
Because you have more hair than him.
There you go. That's a nice save. That's right. I do say this. I'm not bald. I am balding, and I think there's an important distinction there. There's an ing there.
Yes.
There's an ing there. I'm on my way.
We'll get you there.
Believe me.
Whatever year the first Fast and the Furious came out, Vin Diesel was robbed at the Academy Awards. One of the all-time great performances.
There's no question about it.
Speaking of performances, at least.
Upset that Jay Croucher did not ruin any of the Fast and the Furious movies right there.
I don't ruin classics.
Right.
Devin Singletary, last 2 games, he's only had 91 rushing yards, 51 receiving yards, 17.2 points. Matthew, too hard to start Singletary without the touchdown commodity. Do you keep that open or close it?
I'm keeping it open. I actually have him as a top 20 play this week. I'm at running back 19. Here's the thing on Devin Singletary, and shout out to my friend Dwayne McFarland, who is the guy that sort of pointed this out. But the fact of the matter is that in games in which the Bills are competitive, he gets a ton of work, right? You think about the Dolphins game, you think about the Ravens game, 33 total touches, 187 yards from scrimmage, and a touchdown. Those are all games in which he was playing, they were either trailing or it was a tight game. He played 76% of the team snaps. You think about the games against the Rams, the Titans, the Steelers, all those games where the Bills just blew them out. Well, whatever. 25 total touches over those 3 games. The fact of the matter is that he had fewer than 50 rushing yards in those games. Like when they blowing out, hey, let's give Zach Moss and James Cook some run. But in competitive games, that's who they trust, and they lean on Devin Singletary. They're playing the Chiefs this week. My expectation, obviously, is that is a competitive game. I think Singletary gets a lot of run in a high-scoring game. I'm in on Devin Singletary. Keep it open. Top 20 play for me today.
Okay, let's move on to Christian Kirk at Indy this week. He was brutal last week, but he has been decent in weeks before.
Yeah.
Jay, what's happened with the Jags passing game? Do you keep it open with Christian Kirk, or you close it?
I'm almost going to have to close it out of my swaggy wires altogether if they lose to the Colts. It's not great.
Yeah, you're not a real fan. You're not a real fan the way I am. You haven't been look at you.
You're a real
Jaguars fan. Like, I don't know, you're bailing after 2 tough games.
Yeah, well, we'll see how you're feeling if they're 2-4. They're 2-point underdogs to the Colts. I just say I would still keep it open with Christian Kirk, still start a game. He had a great game against the Colts in week 2, and I think this is just wide receiver variance. Like, unless you're Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs, like there are games where, Mike Williams just has 1 reception. Christian Kirk just does nothing. Like, I think you just have to ride it out with Christian Kirk. I'm not too scared about that Indianapolis defense, particularly against a guy who's going to be in the slot a bit, so I would keep it open with Christian Kirk.
You think about this game in week 2 against the Colts, 6 for 78 and 2 yards. You can throw against the slot against the Indianapolis Colts. I'm in on Christian Kirk. He's wide receiver 18 for me this week.
Might just be a little blip. See if they can right the ship. Okay, Drake London for Atlanta. Last 2 games, 0 touchdowns, 11.2 fantasy points. Matthew, has the Falcons' lack of passing volume officially become a concern for Drake London? Would you
for anyone
open or
for America?
Yeah.
For America, for fantasy
Australia.
managers. I want to shout out to my buddy Danny Kelly, who just had a great tweet. There was a tweet about Arthur Smith talking about how great a player Deebo Samuel is, and he was just what an amazing player. And so Danny quote tweeted and said, like, yes, and if he was on my team, I would play him about 55% of the snaps. It's just a great tweet by Danny.
And it would just be a running back.
It'd just be a running back.
He would never run routes.
He would never right, exactly. I mean, just I don't understand anything about Arthur Smith and his offensive plays. But I mean, you think about this again, like Olamide Zacchaeus. I think that's how I say it.
I think you did it.
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he had more receiving yards than Drake London. I mean, like, what are we doing? Kaderil Hodge, only 2 less targets. We know Arthur Smith has a fascination with Kaderil Hodge here. I'm as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 27. The positives are he's gotten at least 7 targets in every game this year, but under 55 receiving yards each of the last 2 weeks as well. We thought without Kyle Pitts that at least there would be a total funnel there, and it's not. Tough defense against San Francisco as well. This is a very good defense. I think he's a risky wide receiver 3.
Yep, I agree. And I think that if you have Drake London, if you have Kyle Pitts, what you need is you need the Falcons to lose a game by 30, which we expected would happen, because right now the Falcons are the only team who have covered all 5 games. Like, they're staying close in all these games, so it's empowering the Arthur Smithness to really take hold. He just wants to run the ball for eternity, and he's been allowed to, and they've been efficient doing it, which just kills you. So I think you need a blowout. You need Nick Bosa back on the field, 6 sacks of Marcus Mariota. You need chaos in Atlanta.
Yeah, they've been annoyingly competent.
Yes.
Okay, we got to move on to Deontay Johnson for Pittsburgh. Last 2 games, 0 touchdowns, 15.2 points. Getting a ton of targets, but no touchdowns. So Matthew, or who did I go to? Jay, sorry. Sorry, what are your guys' names again? With the Steelers.
She's half a Chardonnay in.
Yeah, wow.
With this, okay, so with the Steelers defense being what it is, we already talked about it with Najee Harris, but can Kenny Pickett actually keep the Steelers offense fantasy relevant?
I think so, particularly with Deontay Johnson. Not just keeping it open with him, I'd order another round of shots for the whole bar. I just think Deontay Johnson is the guy. He had 13 targets last week. He's had 4 out of the 5 games with double-digit targets. He's the most talented receiver on that team, and we've seen now across 1 million quarterbacks in Pittsburgh, he's just the guy every single time. George Pickens, that's great. Obviously, he likes the more touchdowns out of Deontay Johnson. 50 targets, no touchdowns, but I still think that he is clearly the guy there, and he's going to be very fantasy relevant the rest of the way.
Yeah, he's the only wide receiver in the NFL to have 50 or more targets and 0 touchdowns. That's just incredibly unlucky, and that's going to change as you see it on there on the screen. And he's on the same list of guys like Digg and Hill and Lamb and Jefferson and Hollywood and Devontae. And so, yes, to me, I'm still in, and I would actually try to buy low on Deontay Johnson, absolutely keeping it open as well. Tough matchup this week against Tampa Bay, but they move him around enough. He'll be fine. Okay. I'm as a borderline top 20 play this week.
We got to get on to Jaylen Waddle, and we know that this was big news that you mentioned earlier today, but the fact that Tua is returning to practice, unlikely to play on Sunday. Teddy Bridgewater expected to back up Skylar Thompson if he's active for a game. Tyreek Hill was wearing a walking boot after the Jets game, optimistic about playing versus the Vikings. Matthew, can Waddle be started with Skylar Thompson under center?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm at wide receiver 15, so I'm keeping it open on Jaylen Waddle. You think about the last 2 games, 2 really weird games, right? Obviously, last week, obviously, you have you have Teddy Bridgewater go out in the first play, and then you have a seventh round rookie guy who's never taken a snap all of a sudden under center. And then the previous week is the short week on the road at Cincinnati, just 3 days, and the Tua injury. I think 2 weird games. Jaylen Waddle's too talented for him not to be in your fantasy lineup. So I'm keeping it open on Jaylen Waddle. I'm not worried about him.
I am as well. This Minnesota defense is not good. They semi-revived Justin Fields, of all people. So I think that Waddle and Hill can both be fantasy relevant, even if it is Skylar Thompson.
Right. We'll have to see. It will be exciting. We have so much more to come here on Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, including a sit-down with someone special. You don't want to go anywhere. We'll have all that more when we return.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.